Today I want to talk about 5 things you should leave out of your dialogue. Hi guys, my name is Wendy Dale. I'm a Random House author and the founder of Memoir Writing for Geniuses. Today I want to talk about 5 things you can do to improve your dialogue. In fact, 5 things you should actually leave out. The first thing is to leave out the greetings. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Here's the before version of my dialogue. Hi, Raj. How you doing? I'm doing great. How about you? Super. Okay, let's get on the road. It's supposed to snow later on. Okay, is that the most boring dialogue in the world? Basically, what I want you to do is really simple. Don't give us greetings. I don't need to know, hi, how are you? What's up? How you doing? That stuff can simply be left out of your book. In general, dialogue is there to add flavor to your text, but I don't know how much flavor, hi, how are you doing? I am fine, really adds to your book. So some people would say, replace it with something like, I opened the door to see Raj. We greeted each other. But I don't even think you need that. I would get to the interesting stuff. I opened the door to see Raj. Let's get on the road. It's supposed to snow later on. So really, is it important that you greeted one another? Is your reader thinking, wait, you just jumped right into this dialogue? It doesn't feel awkward at all. In fact, it makes for a much better scene. Number 2, leave out most of the attributions. So attributions are things like he said, she said, I remarked, the man explained. But using a lot of them can actually bog your text down. Let me give you an example of what not to do. Are you going to order the extra spicy? I asked. I'm thinking about it, Milton said. Last time it gave you acid reflux, I added. Yeah, but I hadn't eaten all day, he explained. I just don't want to hear you complain about how much your stomach is hurting you, I remarked. Okay, so do you see how that's kind of weighing the text down over and over again? I remarked, I commented, he explained. It's kind of annoying. So the first thing that occurs to most writers is to take out some of those attributions, which is one thing you can do. So I could go in and take out a few of these. Are you going to order the extra spicy? I asked. I'm thinking about it, Milton said. Last time it gave you acid reflux. So in that third sentence, it's pretty obvious that the narrator is the one speaking. Yeah, but I hadn't eaten all day. And there it's pretty obvious that that's going to be Milton responding. So in theory, you could argue that you only need the attributions in the first 2 lines of this dialogue. And that's fair. So the other thing you can do is add the character's name in the line of dialogue, the name of the character that you were speaking to. So as an example, let me take line number 3 here. Last time it gave you acid reflux, Milton. So if there are only 2 people in this conversation and one is saying something to Milton, by process of elimination, we know who is speaking. So you can do that sometimes. But if you're always calling someone by their name, it can also sound a little bit weird. Now I'm going to give you my very favorite way of getting rid of attributions, and it's something that not a lot of writers use. What you want to do is replace the attribution entirely, take out he said, and instead tell us something about that character in that moment. Let me explain what I mean by that. Okay, so let's take this first line of dialogue. Are you going to order the extra spicy? So instead of saying, I asked, I replaced it with, I tried to make my question sound casual, not like I was nagging. Milton hated it when I started telling him what to do. So it's very obvious who is speaking because I followed the line of dialogue with a sentence that starts with the word I. So I am the one speaking. So let me keep going with this. Here's the second line of dialogue. I'm thinking about it. Milton looked at the menu more intently now, but I could tell he was just pretending. He already knew what he planned on ordering. It's very obvious who is speaking. It's Milton, because I followed the line of dialogue with a sentence about what the character is doing in that moment. So that is a fabulous way to get rid of your attributions. It also works to make your scene a lot richer. Tip number 3, leave out the adverbs. I'm going to give you some examples of why this doesn't really work to create a rich scene with dialogue. Let me give you an example of what not to do. I can't believe they're out of chocolate chip. She walked back to the table sullenly. They said they'd have it tomorrow. I patted her on the back encouragingly. I guess it's not so bad. She stood up gracefully. So there do you feel the adverbs? I see so many writers create dialogue using tons of adverbs. And what happens is it actually cheapens your prose. It feels like shortcut writing. So even using adjectives or adverbs to describe a character is an oversimplification. What I prefer you do is you interpret the character in that moment. Now, I'll talk more about that in the next video coming up. But for now, what I want you to take away from this is take out those adverbs. Instead, spend a little more time helping me see the character in that moment, because the adverb is really shortcut writing and it doesn't let me in on what is happening in the scene. So let me give you the after version of the scene, a version that has absolutely zero adverbs. I can't believe they're out of chocolate chip. So the original version is she walked back to the table sullenly. Well, how can I interpret that? Help me understand a little bit more what you mean by walking sullenly. I did this. Maritza had been in a great mood, but when she returned to the table, suddenly she was silent. So it's just a little bit more information to replace what one adverb is trying to do and really can't accomplish. My initial version is I patted her on the back encouragingly. I replaced that with, I wanted to be encouraging, but I did think she was making kind of a big deal about nothing. So isn't that a lot richer than you just seeing the narrator pat her friend on the back encouragingly? So keep in mind that adverbs just don't give us much information. In fact, they have the effect of cheapening your writing. You think that you're giving your reader lots of information, but you're really not. You're not putting us there with you. I have 2 more tips for you. Before I do, please hit like and subscribe. And if you would like a free 7-part class on how to structure your memoir, click on the link in the description below this video. Tip number 4, leave out most facial expressions. Ooh, I know I'm going to get a lot of hate mail for this one. This is something that I see so many of my writers trying to do because they think that it's making the scene interesting. They think that it's helping the reader visualize what is going on. But this also has the effect of cheapening your writing. What happens is that so many of my writers are trying to figure out, okay, I need to put something between these lines of dialogues. I don't just want dialogue after dialogue after dialogue. And so they think, oh, okay, I'll describe the expression on his face when I say something to him. But it's really not a very effective way to write your scene. Let me give you the before version, the version of what you actually should not do in your scenes with dialogue. I can't believe you just said that. He raised his eyebrows in surprise. That's just the way I am. I shot him a flirtatious smile. I guess I will have to get used to it, he said with a grin. Now, do you feel how there's not a lot of richness there? Yes, you do visualize, you see people grinning at each other and flirtatious smiles, but you're not really living through this with the narrator. So instead of saying, I shot him a flirtatious smile, help me understand what your narrator is really going through in that moment. What is going through her head when she says this? Okay, let me give you the rewritten version of this, one that takes out these facial expressions. These facial expressions that don't really help me understand what's actually going on in the scene. I can't believe you just said that. I hadn't meant to shock him. I was simply trying to be open with him, something that didn't always come naturally to me. That's just the way I am. Without meaning to, it sounded like I was flirting. Was I? I hadn't yet decided. I guess I will have to get used to it. It almost felt as if he was laughing at me, but in a nice way, as if we were laughing at this together. Stay away from describing facial expressions because there are only so many facial expressions you can describe, but what is actually going on inside your head is so complex. A facial description just can't cut it. Number 5, leave out most of the physical description. What I mean by that is leave out all of these details about what you are doing or what your character is doing in the scene. I know this is super counterintuitive because you've been taught, oh, a reader needs to visualize what is happening. They need to see what's going on. But that is where the mistake lies. Your reader does not want to visualize the scene. Your reader wants to live through it with you. And visual cues are not enough. In fact, they're often boring. So my students will often write scenes. They're at a restaurant and they'll have lines of dialogue. And between the lines of dialogue, they'll say, I took a sip of my wine. I took a bite of peas. I dabbed my face with my napkin. Does that really help put me there with you in the scene? When I see that kind of writing, I realize that once again, the writer is saying, oh, I need to put some stuff between these lines of dialogue. I know, I'll drink my wine and I'll dab my face with my napkin. But it's just not very interesting. What do you do instead of that? If you want to know what really goes in between those lines of dialogue, to help really make this scene rich, to help really put your reader there with you, I'm going to suggest you check out my next video. Dialogue is not as important as you think. Take care, guys. See you next time.